I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, April the 27th, brought to you in part by Vitalix. Vitalix is an American family-owned company that specializes in livestock feed tubs to meet your every need. Livestock is your livelihood, tubs are their expertise. Get the blue tub, go to Vitalix.com. On to the House. If you guys watched it, I know several of you did. Some of you didn't have time or weren't able to get to it. But the hearing in the Senate Ag Committee did happen on Tuesday. It was a success. Once again, another win for the passage of the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act bill. So now we're going to go on to the House, and they're going to have a hearing, and they're going to discuss it here on Wednesday. And they have invited your big four packers to come in there and make their argument. And while they're arguing over that, I hope someone asks them how they feel about the profiteering that they did during the pandemic and how they explain all that went on. But that'll be interesting to see how it goes. But I'm going to give you some cliff notes of what happened at the Tuesday hearing, at the Senate Ag Committee hearing. And like I said, it was an absolute victory for those that are in favor of cattle price discovery and transparency. Now, it was kind of a two-part deal. The first part of it, they had two panels. The first panel was a couple of USDA officials, and then each senator there that was representing the Ag Committee, the Senate Ag Committee, they made statements, and basically, and then they asked the USDA officials, if they saw that we were having a significant limited negotiated trade, and they agreed, and they asked if if they set these mandates, would it increase that? Yes. If they said that, what about price discovery? And they visited a little bit about LMR, and basically by the time they got done with that, the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act had already won. We could have just stopped it right there. But then we brought in some producers and academia and people like that. And so the big, those who are on testifying there was Sean Tiffany, who is a cattle feeder, and he is the president-elect of Kansas Livestock Association, which they are totally opposed to any of this thing like this. He was the one that was opposed to the bill. Dr. Stephen Kuntz, who we've talked about quite a bit because he did this research that was funded by your checkoff dollars to see what it would take to get robust trade. He told the world what that would be. NCBA decided to try to get that, or not all of it. They tried to see if they could get 75% of it, and he was at a very minimum. They said if we could get 75% of it, and then they put all these safeguards in there so they wouldn't hit these triggers, ended up tripping all the triggers. The voluntary program totally failed. And then they said that was going to be policy for them to aggressively seek some type of regulatory fix, which would be like a mandation for minimum trade. And so then that was basically their policy at National Corporate Beef Association. But they didn't do that. They didn't follow through with policy. And I've said that several times. If you have an association, you agree on something, and then it becomes policy, and then you don't follow through, what the hell good was the association to start with? And so none of that worked, and instead of aggressively seeking some type of regulatory fix to get more negotiated trade, because the packers did not want to participate in negotiated trade. Why would they? If you're the biggest kid on the block and you go in there and there's a box of candy bars, do you go in there and negotiate with all the little kids that are a whole lot smaller and littler than you, or do you just take the whole box if you're hungry and greedy? No, you just take the whole box. But anyways, so They didn't seek the regulatory fix that they said they would do. Instead, they just passed a provision that they are opposed to all mandates. And so I guess that just fixed that policy that they just failed upon. And it was really blatant the way they did that. Well, Dr. Stephen Kuntz was there, and he's very soft-spoken, and he's been totally, swayed by those that are asking him to go do these talks and all these kinds of things. And I just never really seen, especially in this atmosphere, an academia guy that gets funding to do research, and then he releases the research out, and then he even come out in a statement whenever we were using some of his research to make our argument for price discovery and more negotiated trade set. No, that's not the reason that I did that research, guys. You're not supposed to use that research for that. We're only supposed to use it over here. And then now he's up there testifying against legislation. I thought they were supposed to be kind of a neutral third-party deal that you could get to go in there and do some fair, unbiased research. Evidently not. But anyway, Dr. Stephen Kuntz were there, and he was, all of his testimony was totally against the cattle market transparency bill. And then we had some heroes. We had Ricky Ruffin. I told you, my friend from rural Mississippi. He was on there. He was the voice for small southeastern cow-calf producers and backgrounders. And he sounded just like them, and he looked just like them, because that's what he is. And he told them, the Senate Ag Committee, what's happened to him. Several years ago, he would have a lot of people to sell his cattle to. And I'm talking about yearling feeders to go on feed, and he was selling a lot of them up to Iowa and places like that, and there were farmer feeders. Well, those smaller independent farmer feeders have become fewer and fewer and fewer, and he said that, basically I don't have any of those guys left to sell cattle to anymore, and I would really, really like to have a better idea of what the fed cattle market is, to know where my margin is at and what their margin is at, and kind of what would be a good price to sell my cattle at, and to see whether I can make it work or not. And he did a good job of that, and everybody liked him, and because he's a likable guy, and it worked out good. And then they had a young woman on there from North Dakota that has an ag family, a ranch family there. They farm and ranch in North Dakota. And she was there representing Farmers Union from North Dakota, and Shelley Zeish, I think. I probably butchered her last name, but I really enjoyed her. And she come in there, saying last week she was in a blizzard trying to save baby calves. And she sees how these alternative marketing agreements have changed the grain business up there, and they're very diversified, and they raise several different kinds of grains. But she was all about price discovery. Talked about selling their cattle in sale barns, and I'm sure some of the people thought, "Oh my God, that's antiquated." No, up in the northern plains, that's where the premiums are paid, is in the sale barns, guys. And she talked about friends that she knew that were in the packing business on a smaller scale. She talked about some producers up there that had a feedlot in North Dakota, and they hadn't had a packer bid to them negotiated in the last 30 years, other than 2014, whenever the supplies got really, really tight. They come around and gave them a price. So she understood why we need minimum mandates for trade, but it was pretty good. I tell you what, I did not dislike Sean Tiffany, the president-elect of KLA. He was well-spoken. He looked the part. I mean, he's a very professional younger man there, but you can tell that he's got a passion for the business. But that's all he knows is these AMAs, because since him and his brother had taken over the operation, he just can't imagine asking more for his premium cattle and having the leverage for packers to pay more for them. And of course, he's involved in U.S. premium beef like all your KLA bigwigs are. And that's where a lot of your bigger feeders in Kansas, mostly, some in Oklahoma and Texas, have partnered up with Marfrig Global, Brazilian beef packer, and supplying them with a pretty large percentage of their weekly kill there. And then they get a little bit bigger premium there, up to as much as $65 is what they were saying on a carcass, while your packers are making, $1,000, $1,500, maybe $2,500 if we had a pandemic and they couldn't keep production up there. But there wasn't a scuffle, maybe like we'd had in the one last year or anything like that. They just kind of said their piece there. Now, the hero, really, of the whole Senate Ag Committee hearing was Deb Fischer. And she's one of the original authors of it, her and Chuck Grassley, and they kind of combined or compromised their two bills together to get something done. But man, did Deb Fischer hit it home. She was on her game. She is a rancher from Nebraska. She serves her constituents in that part of the country, especially in the ag part. And I mean, she just hit point after point after point, and it was fantastic to hear her talk. She was saying that she would have liked to have had some feeders, cattle feeders from Nebraska or Iowa or somebody there that was up in that Midwest or Northern Plains cattle feeding region that are big supporters of the Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, but they were all too fearful of retaliation from the packers if they had gotten up there and said their speech or showed their support for the bill. Now, isn't that nice? Isn't that wonderful? I tell you what, that goes to show you how crooked this whole deal is when a man can't even go to his Washington, D.C. Senate and sit down and argue what he's in support of, and then that's his business because of fear of retaliation. So that was a big point that she made. Her and Chuck Grassley both said, we've got people that are against this bill because it's not aggressive enough, and we've got people that are against this bill because it's way too aggressive, and then we've got a lot of people right here in the middle, and it's kind of a sweet spot, which, as they have worked through different types of legislation for a long time, they feel comfortable right there. And I think that is a very good point. She made note of the volunteer program that I spoke of earlier, that 75% of a robust market, a voluntary program that NCBA did, and that it failed, and that they were supposed to get behind something and then they didn't. She basically called them out on that, and did not fail to make that point. And I thought that was really, really good. Chuck Grassley, of course, he's always a champion for the cattle producer. He works for his constituents in Iowa. That's what those legislators are supposed to do, is they're supposed to be a one collective voice for all those constituents that they had. You're not supposed to get into having deals by themselves or trying to sway things because of something that they feel personally. No, they're supposed to take the voices of their constituents and move them forward. That's why Chuck Grassley stated on there that he will not give up on this bill, and he will not give up on doing something to preserve the cattle feeding industry in his state. So that was fantastic. He made several good points on there. He's well versed in this deal. I think he is going to sway a lot of senators that are not on the Ag Committee and don't really understand what it's all about, but he's well respected there. He's going to get most of the Republicans that don't feel real strongly one way or the other to vote with this. President Magoo has backed this. He is going to be getting most of the Democrats that don't really have a strong feeling one way or the other, because he's basically endorsed this. So we've got the Senate, and who was surprising once again was surprising was our liberal guy that doesn't eat meat, Cory Booker. And he come out and was fantastic again. He kind of went on a rant there, and I was thinking to myself, go Spartacus. And I'm going to give RCAF some kudos right here. This time that they've spent with Cory Booker, and then he they joined their 5014 bill in with his bill to try to get rid of CAFOs, which is concentrated animal feeding operations, i.e. feedlots, to outlaw the feedlots. They've spent time with him, and they've rubbed off on him a little bit, because he didn't think that this bill was aggressive enough, but he's still in support of it. And he talked about truth in labeling, product of the USA things and stuff like that. And he did a great job there for somebody that supposedly doesn't take a bite of any type of meat. But he was in support of it, so that was fantastic. Now, who was against it? Well, of course, the ranking member there, Senator Boozman, and it was almost like he is from a state where Tyson would headquarter, and that they had a big sway on him. But he didn't get too excited about it. You could tell that he liked Ricky Ruffin because he was from the South, and they were kind of from the same areas. He didn't really have a leg to stand on this deal. Senator Coach Tuberville was probably the most disgusting on the deal, and he come out totally against it, and I'm not sure why he comes out against it, because he had spoke right after Cindy Hyde-Smith, who is from Mississippi, and she said she knew Ricky Ruffin and knew that he was a producer there, and knew that he had been a leader in the ag world there in Mississippi. And then you got the very next state over, and Coach Tuberville is totally against it. Now, I've never been a big fan of Coach Tuberville. It was hard to root for my Texas Tech Red Raiders the short stint that he spent there. I'm not sure what 40 years of coaching football does to prepare you to be a senator, but I did understand that he was pretty talented in getting big donors to give money. So maybe that was where he found his niche in there. But anyway, it was interesting hearing. You can still go back and watch it. You need to watch the one that they're having here today. It starts at the same time at 10 o'clock Eastern, I believe. So that'll be interesting to see. Let's talk about your board. On Tuesday, April live cattle futures up 90, settling at 140, when most all the cattle are bringing 145 or better. And we're at the very end of April here. So if the board on live cattle does not come together with your cash market, albeit how thin it is, what we have right now, what the hell good is it? It's 140. Cattle are bringing 140 in the southern plains, are bringing 145, 6, 7 in the northern plains. June up 82 cents at 136 and a quarter. Your back month's up 37 cents to up 95. April feeder cattle down 35 cents at 156.20. May was down 57 at 160.72. Back months on feeder cattle down $1.02 to down $1.75. But your cash feeders were selling very well on Tuesday, and I'm going to give you some of those top quotes like I always do. Corn up 3 cents at 8.03 and a quarter at the end of regular trading. Beans up 1 3/4 cents only. That's probably the least movement they've had for a long time. 17.05 and a quarter. And Kansas City hard red winter wheat up 12.5 cents at 11.57 3/4. Your fats, they had a lot more trade late Monday than what we thought. You know, I told you a little bit of trickle of trade that they had confirmed on Monday. They had quite a bit more trade than that. Your market is at least fully steady. The Midwest and the Northern Plains are trading their cattle in the upper portion of last week's trend and price range, and the Southern Plains is fully steady. So it's not too bad. Now your dress market is not nearly as peppy as it was late last week, and they're not trading a lot of cattle dressed either, but we gained over $6 in your dress market last week, so it may be a tall order to get up to the top of that, but still trading very well. Colorado printed, oh my gosh, these packers are really short right now, and they're going to people that they know have cattle in loose hands that they can trade negotiated, and they're going in there and buying them. There's a third packer going into Colorado, so it's printing information so where we can see it. Look at all the transparency that's going on. 1,200 head in Colorado, 144 to 146. Iowa, 4,600 head, from 145 to 147. Some dress trade from 230 to 232. Nebraska, 17,600 head just on Tuesday, guys. 144 to 146 and a half. Dress trade from 230 to mostly 232. Kansas, 8,500 at 140. Little bit of dress from 230 to 232. Texas, 1,100 head at 140. There is a little bit of a difference there. If you've got cattle that were put on feed as yearlings, so it'd be old croppers, they're a lot more desirable than those that were put on as big calves. Those cattle that's got a tick more age to them. They feed better, they grade better, they're more desirable to the packers, and so we're seeing a little bit of difference in the demand for those cattle there. But your AMAs are getting to realize the gains that your cash market saw last week. So most of your AMA formula guys ought to be really excited because they get to gain some ground this week because they're always a week behind. Because they totally exploit the cash market that a very small number of your cattle feeders put together. They take that, exploit it, but they're getting to see those gains this week. But one thing that did come up during that Senate Ag Committee hearing was that they said that 18% of your AMAs, your alternative marketing agreements, don't include any premiums or discounts. It's just a promise to get a kill slot. Ain't that a how do you do? How about box beef cutout values? They were lower Monday or on Tuesday afternoon. Choice cuts down 243 at 264.17. How about selects down 29 cents at 256.23. Slaughter very aggressive so far, so we could see a big slaughter this week. Already 250,000 just through Tuesday, 14,000 more than last week, 11,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Beaver County Stockyards is having a fundraiser for the local volunteer firefighters in that Oklahoma Panhandle. They had such bad fires there. They fought them for a couple of 3 weeks. Those guys are amazing. They're wanting to raise a significant amount of money. They're going to give it to the county commissioners and let them divvy it up in the proper channels where they need it the worst. But if you're interested in donating to that, they're going to kind of have a rollover deal there, but they're going to pool the money, and we're going to see how much they can get put together. They've got their sight set pretty high, and knowing Jeff Slatton, they're probably going to reach it because he's a big supporter of things like that in his area. If you'd like to get involved with that, get a hold of Jeff Slatton at Beaver County Stockyards in Beaver, Oklahoma. If you'd like to watch that next Tuesday, that's where they're going to have the fundraisers during the regular sale. So that'll be quite a touching deal. Let's talk about your feeder cattle markets. Your real-time index on DV auction late in the day on Tuesday at 157.12, just down 24 cents. And the board's been terrible this week, guys. And your real-time index, which is always up to date and current, is $1 higher than your latest CME cash feeder cattle index. And I guess that's why your April feeder cattle futures are lagging behind there, because that's what they meet up to. But I'm not sure what the disparage right there is, because they pull that information out of the same areas. Talk about your big sales on Tuesday. Ozarks Regional Stockyard, West Plains, Missouri, 2,500 head in the ring. Another nearly 400 on their in-house video with DV auction. The cattle through the ring sold steady to $3 higher, a lot of smaller groups, but included in that in-house video was the Billy Caldwell cattle from Rosebud, Arkansas. He had some nice black yearlings there. This time of year, guys, they don't need a lot of hair on them. They can feed anywhere in the world. They'll feed better if they don't have a lot of hair. It's going to get hot. But black yearling steers, 114 of them will be the sort out of 170 of them. That's how a lot of them further south deals are. Give you a big sort there, make them just like you want. 114 of them with a base weight of 850 pounds, current delivery being 157.60 in Arkansas, people. That's through Ozarks Regional Stockyard with their in-house DV auction video. Let's talk about Denny Rezac Livestock Commission in St. Mary's, Kansas. Look at these loads and bigger strings that they sold included in their sale on Tuesday at Rezac Livestock Commission. I mean, there's a load of 914 pounders on there that bring 153. There's two loads of 827 pounders that bring 159. Big sale there in St. Mary's, Kansas. How about some individual quotes? Brad Hahn for Donia Livestock Auction. They sold 120 head of 887 pound steers at 158.75. Wow. How about Kimball Livestock Exchange? 58 head, 641 steers, bring 187.25. Had to have been stockers. But the best quote that I saw anywhere, your Rowgrow top quote for the day, come out of the hottest sale of the day, Kingsville Livestock Auction in Kingsville, Missouri. That's just south and east of Kansas City there. Steve Varner, a friend of mine there, he had some cattle weighed just short of 9, bring 155.85, and I saw where they had sold, and I thought maybe that was going to be the deal. But the Ansteins sold 215 head, one swath, 891 pound steers at 159.10. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.